Hey,
Hello.
Sonia.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
You're still in the office, right? I
Yeah.
can hear you.
Oh, good.
Awesome. Hey, Danielle.
Hi, g'day Sonia, g'day Laura. How are we both?
Good.
Just gonna close my curtains a bit
Really
so I'm kind of
good.
matching the Australian sun levels. There we go. That's more appropriate.
There's no sun anymore, at least here in the southern part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Danielle, you want to get host rights?
Oh, yes, please. Excellent. Multiple panelists can host simultaneously. Sonia, I'm not sure if you saw those two videos from Laura that I sent you through on Slack. So I don't know if we want to share those or how you want to do that.
Yeah, Laura, I think Danielle shared two videos, which are basically, I think, walkthroughs through the current stage or one of the recent phases. So whenever you think that fits well, I have added two slides, one like basically summarizing a little bit the project you're working on, but you can definitely tell, you know, whatever you want in that context. But I have also left a little bit the summary, what you were thinking around material choices and so on. And then let me know what you prefer in terms of the video walkthrough. And I've also added a big slide to with your Instagram account, so that people know that there is a lot of documentation as well as the website itself. Yeah.
If I forget
just a second, give me a second.
Forget about the walkthrough video, Sonia, just do it whenever you want. I don't mind. That's it.
It's all very exciting. It's all very exciting, Laura. So all the walls are up and the roof's on, the windows are in. What's the next stage?
Oh, well, actually, Dean messaged me with a photo of the recycled deck chair that they've made out of the old joists in the floor today. So that was pretty cool.
Cool. That is very cool. Excellent. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it might be interesting to ask today, this evening, kind of, I was wondering about how it works if you're doing like a prefab situation, how that works with a builder. Like, do all builders kind of happy to work with prefab, or is only some, like, how did you choose your builder? And was it kind of a prerequisite that they'd be into prefab, or?
Well, yeah, I don't know whether lots of other builders would be okay with it. I'm guessing they wouldn't be, but I met my builder through Denby, who's my designer, and they're very much into wanting to do the right thing by the environment and everything. So they were, keen to participate and make it work.
Okay, awesome. Oh, okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm sure Paul probably has a lot of experience with a bunch of different builders. So I'm sure he'll be able to let people know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I might just send Paul the Zoom link again, just in case he's struggling to get in.
You can't see my background, can you? Is it blurred out?
It's blurred out. It looks like a generic office kind of blurry vibe. So I think that's fine. No state secrets on the walls that we can see specifically.
That's good.
All right, where are we?
Sorry, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. That was Paul. I think he thought it's at 7, so he will basically dial in on the way somewhere. It's fine, and we will just run with everything. Yeah, it's busy at the moment, so which is a good thing as well.
Sure.
Okay, we still have a few minutes, and we will wait for Paul to join us as well.
I noticed, Daniel, that I'm missing emails when you send them to me. So if I'm Slack, you can WhatsApp me, and then
okay.
Yeah, I'm so slow with emails at the moment because so much going on with the house.
Yeah, no doubt.
But it's amazing progress, Laura. So every time I'm looking, on Instagram, there's something new, something added. So it's really coming together really nicely.
Yeah. Yeah, every day. It's different. So
cool.
Yeah.
The panels start going on next week, so I'm going to try and go out and get a time lapse of that, set the camera up before I go to work.
That's amazing. Because I think even like in the last, I would say 6-7 weeks, it has speed up the whole process massively, and everything just keeps, coming and getting together. So it's really great.
Yeah.
And you must be excited as well because you've been planning and managing the whole process for such a long time.
Yeah, I know that this is like a cliche, but it doesn't feel real still. Like even when I go there, because it's been going on for so long, I don't feel like it's real.
Yeah.
Imagine. Because I think in particular because the way how you're documenting it and the way how you are making it transparent is quite amazing, I have to say.
Oh.
And it's so accessible to anyone actually to understand your journey and why and what happened in between. So it's a great piece of learning as well. But I hear like even around the corner, some small extension renovations have easily they basically took 1.5 to 2 years, which is massive. And that was actually the build process. So not even considering approvals or anything. In your case, the building actually is going up fairly quickly now, which is so nice to see. It was all the other part, the pre-phase.
Yeah, the build bit is not the problem.
Yeah. True. And this is, I guess, where even today's session will be really interesting to dive deeper and to unpack actually those benefits from prefabrication. But I think Paul will add as well that particular view on sustainability, which I'm really excited about to hear and to dive more into details how he defines it. And because there's definitely also like not every prefab is the same.
Yes.
So I think that's also really important probably to discuss. And
my friends asked about that on one of my posts, and she said she's going to dial in today, so I'll try to remember that, because she asked, can you still use prefab even if you've already got a building design? And I said yes. You went, okay, I've signed up.
That's good to know.
Yeah, like everything, I'm like, if there's anything you want to add, even like for example that angle, just feel free to add that and open even some questions or some additional questions even to Paul.
Yeah, okay.
So Paul is a little bit maybe late. I'm hoping he finds a safe spot beside the road somewhere to
So
dial
we're keeping
in.
an eye on the attendees list to add him as a panelist as soon as he jumps in.
Yeah, you are keeping an eye on that,
Mhm.
Danielle. All right, perfect. So we will still wait maybe a couple of minutes before we start, because otherwise Laura will have to talk first.
I'll just make stuff up and then he'll have to come on and correct it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you can talk a lot about the panels, the way how it works. So
Yep.
just see.
Yeah, you can tell us how you really feel about him while he's not here.
Yeah.
I just text him to see. So for everyone here in this session, we are just waiting for Paul Adams to join. So give us maybe 1-2 more minutes and then we will make a start. He's joining. One more second.
You maybe just want to start doing a bit of an intro, Sonia, and introing Laura in the session, and hopefully Paul can slide in the next minute or so.
Yes, you're keeping an eye on on coming in. All right. All right. So welcome everyone to this exciting session tonight. We will be unpacking prefab and modular building. And this is a big topic, in particular when we're looking at low carbon construction and climate ready homes, because the whole industry has the opportunity really to think deeply how we can change the ways how we construct homes, but also even the business models behind it, and really be part of that circular economy thinking. So tonight we will have the pleasure to listen to Paul Adams from Fairweather Homes. But before we jump into explaining and diving deeper into the details, I really want to do a quick acknowledgement also of country. So in this spirit of reconciliation, Evitat acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to the elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aborigine and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. We are here to listen, learn, and build a future together. Paul, you made it. Can you hear us? I think you are still on mute. And I will proceed. I hope that works. All right. So I welcome everyone tonight. We have Paul Adams here, Director of Fairweather Homes. Paul will be doing his own introduction and also giving you the history of Fairweather Homes. But Fairweather Homes have joined Evitat, and we are really excited to talk about prefabrication, their models of construction, and how they deliver really time and cost-effective solutions for homeowners. And it ranges from modular design solutions, even to custom homes. So I'm really looking forward to dive here deeper into the specifics. And we have also Laura Ryan, who is absolutely passionate about low carbon footprint. And she has her passion project currently underway. It's the Impossible House, which sits in the middle of Sydney and which aims to be completely off-grid. So it's a rebuild and a restructuring of an existing small workers' cottage. And she will be sharing her current progress and in particular the details around the work with Fairweather Homes. I also want to introduce Daniel. Daniel will be managing all your questions in the background, but also some polls. And if there's anything else you want to know or maybe get access to, please feel free to share anything in the chat or in the Q&A, and Daniel will look after that. So, Paul, can you hear us? Still don't have him. Laura, you can hear us, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I think I'm on now. Are you there?
Yeah.
Good.
Excellent. Excellent. We can hear you, Paul.
I'm sorry you can't see me. I just don't have the video thing working, so we'll have to do this. I'm sorry.
That's totally fine. Can you see our screen?
Yes, it's all good.
Awesome. Okay, that's perfect. That will work perfectly. So, Paul, I hand it over to give us maybe a quick run through the details around the work you do and Fairweather Home. Just keep it maybe in a short version, because we will then dive also again a little bit deeper in all the details around prefabrication, and then also around certain stats. So I hand it over to you, Paul.
G'day, how are you? So my name is Paul Adams. I'm a registered architect in Victoria and other states, New South Wales, Queensland. I run a business that brings together sort of architecture and prefabrication. So what we do is we have an architecture practice which designs buildings. We also have a fabrication business which fabricates. So we start the process working with a customer or a client, and we'll talk to Laura soon about how that works. And ultimately we then work with a builder to supply to the builder a prefabricated elements that get used in the building. So we're architects and fabricators, and bring that all together. And what we're trying to achieve with the business at Fairweather Homes is trying to streamline the construction process, reduce waste, look at sustainability all the way through the building fabric from not just the building operations, but also in the materials that are used, and taking that through the lens of prefabrication and panelisation in particular, which then adds another discipline to the building fabric, which is all about sort of waste minimisation and efficient construction practice. So we're there to support the builder then to build a building quickly, and we work in parallel or in conjunction with the builder's time frame to support their build. Yeah.
That's great. And I think Fairweather Homes exists already since the 80s, if I'm not wrong, but maybe correct me.
Yeah, so Fairweather Homes was conceived in the 80s by a fairly visionary architect, John Baird, and John Baird's developed this system of basically a kit of parts system. So prefabricating offsite, a kit of parts and a design system, which the architect, so he was an architect and he would use that design system and that kit of parts to come up with an architecturally bespoke design solution, and then follow through with basically a supply of materials. So a kit, it's like a kit home system. So in the 80s, that was quite a revolutionary approach to building. All timber-based construction, all about the same sort of ethical position that we have, and what that was all about was trying to create affordability and sustainability and energy efficiency in sort of the Australian housing market, and impacting that with an architect-driven system. So that evolved in the 80s and into the 90s, and I started working there and ultimately picked up the business in the sort of early 2000s, and here we are now. Yeah,
amazing. So prefabrication in construction has now moved really into the center stage because it can, or it holds actually a key to sustainability and becoming maybe the solution also to take better climate action. So when we are looking at climate action, the impact of, for example, upfront emissions, but also the waste in particular during construction, that is actually a huge amount. On average, 40% of our landfill is construction waste. So I have tried to find some graphs here which outline a little bit actually savings between conventional construction and modular construction. And I guess this is maybe something, Paul, where you can shed a little bit more light how it saves actually the waste, in particular compared to, for example, on-site overhead and material waste, and how that converts actually into better climate solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk about our processes as an example. I mean, modular construction, prefabrication, there's a whole lot of different versions of that and different materiality and different sort of approaches. But we focus on a timber-based construction process or a fabrication process. And what we do basically is through the fabrication, through the factory, basically have waste minimization practices in what we do in the factory. So anything that's got a factory setting means that we can, sort of dispose of materials in a controlled manner ourselves. We can reuse timber components. We can use offcuts for different purposes. So what we're doing is we've got a controlled environment. We've got materials that come in. We can manage those materials in. We can manage them during the fabrication process, and then anything that might be deemed sort of through traditional construction to be a waste or an offcut or something that would just go to landfill, because once you're on site, there isn't really a way to manage waste other than to dispose of it. So we have a waste management process in the factory, and that's sort of ubiquitous with all sort of factories or processes. So when you compare it with the traditional construction method, what you're looking at now is manufacturing sort of influencing how construction can reduce waste. So And we use timber predominantly, and that's a material that can be, you know, once it's cut, be sort of reused and repurposed. We also look at dimensional characteristics of the building and materials that we order, and making sure that we sort of have as best fit as possible between what the materiality is and the application in the fabrication. And that's what we can do. And in terms of on-site waste, what we take to site has already been manufactured or fabricated. Therefore, we don't contribute any on-site waste. So there's nothing that we would bring to site that we would leave there. We will leave after delivery to the builder. You know, basically, if there's anything that's loose materials that need to be managed on site, that's traditional waste. But anything that we have pre-made will result in zero waste on site. Yeah.
So you have been also quoted, and you mentioned that just a second ago. Just because it's prefab, it doesn't mean it's sustainable. So the focus on timber structures is a central piece actually at Fairweather Homes, and also within the design phase. That applies to all your buildings, or is it a particular range? So is that a general sustainability criteria at Fairweather Homes?
So we've taken the principle of looking at renewable resources as the sort of the primary construction material, and that being something that can be grown, and that's timber, and then sourcing that from as locally grown plantations as possible. So plantation timber, locally grown, being what our would be highest on the criteria selection process for what material we'd use to build from. It also sits very comfortably in the Australian building industry. You know, virtually all, large percentage of homes in Australia are built with timber as the main sort of structural component of the building. There's other veneers and bricks and other claddings go onto that, but the basis of most housing in Australia, really is timber, or in the eastern seaboard. So when we're looking at being a fabricator, we sit with the sort of timber fabrication network, and that's a very sort of understood way of building. The other element to what we do through the architectural process is look at designing the building to suit its local climatic conditions and the site that it's on. So the sustainability element of the way we work, and that's why panelisation is sort of key to what we do, is that designing the house to sit on a site effectively is a big contributor to the operating or the performance or the efficiency of the home. So having north-facing glazing, for example, minimising east and west, having sun shading in summer and not in winter. So all of those sort of basic principles around passive design, that also needs to be sort of factored in. So the reason we look at panelisation as an important contributor to sort of an efficient building is that we can also design with that. We can use the design's a lot more flexible than what might be a modular build, which is sort of building a fairly sort of basic sort of box on the back of a truck sort of thing. So we've got a bit more sort of nuanced, and we can sort of vary the size and volume and shape of the spaces as well. So there's sort of a couple of factors come into play when talking about sort of prefabrication and what method of prefabrication and why do we use timber. So timber is also, once in a factory setting, you've got to set up a process, and sort of and timber is a material, and sort of there's processes around building with timber which are different from processes around building with steel. So you've also got to sort of work with that.
Oh, great. And we have actually prepared two projects walkthroughs. So it will be showing also very clearly the process from design throughout the different phases. But before we jump into that part, there's also another element, of course, around time saving and how that affects actually even the cost savings. When I'm talking about cost savings, time has become or is often equal costs, because if someone, for example, has very long construction times with their renovation. Let's say I've watched, for example, two neighbors around the corners doing extensions, and it took really around 1.5 years. So it was constantly in delays, and that meant they needed basically to rent another place. All these additional costs basically attributed to a huge blowout in budget. So explain us a little bit. There are certain phases which are equal, but then there is definitely a phase of prefabrication and then delivery to site, which are quite often time saving. So take us a little bit into those details.
So there's prefabrication in general. So we're a particular type of fabricator, which is around sort of framed construction. And then there'll be other models of prefabrication, which are volumetric or sort of complete buildings which get delivered to site. Whichever of those, any of the work that's being done off-site in a setting that's a factory setting is a controlled environment, and that work can be done in a sort of far more efficient process. So that's it. There's just general efficiencies around working in a controlled environment. The other realities around having a having a prefabrication setup is that you've got one sort of workplace, so you can have contractors and staff and all of the contributors to building a building. So let's say it's a modular builder, which is not us, but let's say it was a modular builder, electricians, plumbers, plasterers, all of those trades can all attend one workplace. So you've got all these efficiencies around sort of just going to work and sort of working within rather than going off to a building site, which could be 2 hours drive or, So there's all these sort of factors around sort of workers and trades and how they interact with the building. So if you're going to a factory, the other thing is the more that can be done sort of off-site. And so the way we work is that working off-site whilst the builder's working on-site means there's two processes running parallel. So whilst the builder's getting the groundworks prepared, while the builder's doing the drainage and in Laura's case, the underground tanks and all of this sort of subfloor work, we can be in the factory fabricating the frames and doing all this other work. So you've got two processes running parallel. So there's another bunch of efficiencies. So it's all around sort of efficiencies. And then if you wanted to have an instant building the whole thing offsite in a controlled setting, bring it on a truck and then sort of landing it, all of a sudden you've just got an instant building. Yeah.
That's basically even one level up. But I think I remember when you told me, for example, the moment when there is a roof or the roof structure can be put in place, that speeds up all the additional trades a builder needs to coordinate. And they can basically run the schedule through and get everyone in and really do actually that work very streamlined. So that's a big bonus. In particular, I think in the current landscape, where it's really hard for many builders actually to coordinate these trades in between and get them on site in an efficient time structure. And this often contributes really to blowouts in timeframes, costs, and many more issues along the construction process. So I think this is a really big benefit looking into prefabrication. And I've picked here a couple of examples, and we will also dive in a second into some face photos and really explanation. So I might actually start with this one. Can you tell us a little bit what this project is about, where it's located, and how the phases are going through?
Yeah, sure. So I guess this is just a bit of a discussion around process at our end. So what we've got here is, and then Sonia will sort of add the the other layers to this. But
Yes.
at the front end, what we're doing is doing a design service we're an architectural practice, or we have an architectural practice that works with us. And what we're doing is designing a building that's site specific. We're looking at the client's brief. We're looking at how the site, the project sits on the site, and looking at the sizing and shape and orientation and shading, all those sorts of things. So we're being an architect, but while we're doing that, we're also thinking about, well, this is going to be handed over to the fabrication side of things at some point. We're going to be sending something to the builder on site. So what we're doing simultaneously is thinking about the fabrication, the breakdown, and then ultimately we will also be detailing the building. So process-wise, what we've got is an architectural process up front, which is that nice design on the left. Then we've got a fabrication process, which is the next step on the right. So the building gets turned into fabrication drawings, shop drawings, and then if Sonia keeps going, what we're then looking at is that virtual fabrication then becomes, literally a fabricated building. This is the panelised solution, and what you can see there is traditional wall frames with bracing, wall frames with bracing, wall wrap, windows in, and cladding on certain sections. So what the builder is receiving is a fabricated, a prefabricated wall system rather than just a prefabricated frame. So it's an evolution or a growth from what a traditional sort of frame and truss supplier would send to site, but it's also got a front end of an architectural service that went with it. And so what you can see is with some lifting and cranage, that design you saw earlier would then be fabricated, transported, delivered, and then the on-site guys would receive it and start putting it together. And then what you've got then is the next slide.
Yeah. Here.
Tidying it up, and then the roofer in this, in these cases, the builder then follows through with the roof. And then there you've got, now that building's still got a few shading elements and things to then be added to it, but what you've got is a very efficient process to get it from sort of slab to weather tight. The sort of things we're trying to focus on with this is with the roof system. Whilst we're not roofers or contractors, we don't do that. The builder does. Part of our fabrication can then look at offering a very quick way of wrapping the roof up, so the roof could then be weather tight even before the roofer gets there. But nevertheless, the roofer can then come put the roof on, and then you've got a controlled sort of indoor building. So programming the plastering and the insulation and internal fit out can be done sort of with more confidence, knowing that the roof can come on quite quickly after the slab's poured, really. So if you went back a couple of steps, whilst we were fabricating this, the builders on site getting the slab ready and the groundworks and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
So Paul, from fabricating actually these panels to delivery and install, of course that depends also on the size, but what is basically the average maybe time frames to a project like this, or what was it in this case? How quickly was it actually airtight?
It took about the photo on the left there, that took about before the roof came on, that was about maybe a week, so about seven working days to get to that. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I mean. It's so time efficient and allows actually also these different stakeholders who are involved to work very, very efficiently. I think it's a brilliant way to look at construction. So in terms of the panels, for example, in this case, what are they made of? And and you mentioned also insulation. Is that like a part which will be added once installed, or how is it considered?
Sorry,
Paul,
just
you
see if
still
I'm
with us?
there.
Hello? Paul? Did we lost him? Oh, we might have lost him for a second. Can't get him back. Okay. Well, we will keep that.
Sorry, I'm back.
You're back. Oh, awesome. My question was in terms of the panels, what are they made of? And you mentioned also insulation is often then added as an like from internally, from the inside then as well. Yeah, tell us a little bit about how they like what's the way you compose these panels from.
Yeah, so it's a wall system. So the frames are, you know, traditional built frames as you'd expect for any home. So and then it's adding the layers that you would see in a traditional build, but just being done in a factory setting. So there's nothing different about the way the construction is. It's more just the process around it, around how it's done. So and it's as you would, and the earlier sort of intervention of an architectural process around designing a building that's got some efficiencies to it. So you'll see this is a very rectilinear build, so super efficient, like very energy efficient, and very sort of easy to break down into panels and components. So the shop drawing process is to break down that larger building into manageable size panels. And Laura's will be the next project we talk about will be a different approach to it. And the constraints on site really dictate how big the panels are, what lifting equipment there is available, how close the vehicles can get. So when we deliver the sort of package to the builder, what happens next when you get there? You know, how is it being lifted off? How is it being put into place? How big is the truck? How high is the load? So all of those are the influences around how we break the building into panels. But the basic construction is timber frame construction with a fully sheathed braced wrap of a structural wrap. But that structural wrap also means that the building can be, the panels can be transported safely with windows in them. Then we have a wall wrap and taped windows, and then a cladding system. So it's those layers, and it's probably a bit more obvious on Laura's. Yeah.
Are there any, like, for example, I mean, Laura's is a tight space. Like, are there sometimes even such constraints where you might actually need to really think around how to do it, and even it then significantly impacts the design outcomes of a home?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the panels can be broken down into as smaller sizes as is needed. It's just then how efficient that is as a process. So the smaller each panel gets, I guess, less efficient. The less efficient the sort of the installation for the builder. So so with Laura's, we were really dictated by the weight of the panels and being able to, with two people, have them. And it's probably not that clear on these photos, but to bring them down a small lane, sort of 1.2 meters wide, or through the front door, and then sort of erect the frame in that regard. So you saw the other photos had everything kind of already applied, all of the layers and the windows and the glass and everything was already in. Some of those panels, so that one that you can see there, that would have weighed, you know, maybe, I mean, that might be 500 kilograms by the time all of those layers are applied. So there's half a ton. That's not going to be moved by a couple of strong people anytime soon. So you have to have lifting equipment, and then, you know, the whole. So with Laura's, really, what got done offsite or in the fabrication, in the factory, was really determined by what could be carried at the other end. And maybe do you want me to transition into that, talking about that now, or?
Sorry, what was that?
I was going to say, did you want me to talk to some of that?
Yes, maybe take us a little bit through the specifics in Laura's case, because probably not everyone is familiar with the Impossible House. And I think Laura will add, I think, the lot around the goals and everything and the journey in itself. But I think you had managed actually to overcome some significant obstacles within the design process and also with the way how it's built. So maybe tap a little bit on these specifics.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, with Laura's, these photos are from the top left to the bottom right, a bit of just a process sequence, a bit like the other project, but with a few other sort of steps in between. So really at the the top left, we're talking about working with Laura, the client, as an architect, saying we need to come up with a design solution for your particular site. What are the town planning or the DA rules? What are the opportunities? What are the constraints? All of that sort of usual architectural process around design. We're thinking about later how it might come together in a fabricated way, but if we stick to timber construction, layers of materials, windows, all of the sort of the rules that we apply to the design process, then we will be able to fabricate something ultimately. And how that then ends up on site would be a process we'll sort of work through later on. But what you're seeing here is we started with a concept. That concept goes for town planning, that goes through DA. Then we document it and draw it up for the builder and all of the contractors and ourselves as a contractor later to work on. Then for us, we go into a fabrication process, shop drawings. In this case, we actually stood the whole frame up in the factory to just test that it would come together, because we were driving from Melbourne to Sydney and we just wanted to make sure we ironed out any potential clashes. Or Laura's project is quite sort of site specific and really quite bespoke. It's not sort of just a standard, here's a prefabricated building. It's really specific to what her needs are, and the site and the town planning, everything. So we made sure the frames would all come together. We stood it up, took it to site, then it got stood up on site, and then now the photo on the last photo is pretty much where it's at the moment, sort of with the layers applied. But those layers then got applied on site because of that weight factor. So what we're talking about is really doing the best we could do from a weight point of view. Have you got some videos a bit later around the install? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we have a video. I will run that in a second.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, like, what's the total, maybe just to throw in some facts, the total size of the home?
The extension was only, I think, about 40 square meters, plus the original house, which is probably about the same. So the footprints, Laura, do you know the figures?
Yeah, that's right, because the total space is 104.
Yeah.
And
so
it has, I think, two bedrooms, right, Laura?
Yeah, two
Or three?
bedrooms, a study, which is sort of a bedroom as well.
Yeah, could be used as a spare bedroom for guests, or has a multifunctional room, basically.
So probably
it's a
what's
great
not clear
example.
sorry. Probably what's not clear in this photo is that this is at the back of a terrace house in Newtown in Sydney. So it's a very, very tight site. And this is a photo from the lane. So the context is the front of the house is the original sort of 2-bedroom cottage. And this is in addition to the back of it. So we're just showing off the prefabricated bit, but there's another element at the front, which is bedrooms and a loft and a dormer windows and an upper level terrace, which goes with it. And so what this project is about is sort of, retaining the existing building fabric and adding something as efficiently as possible to the extension. Yeah.
Yes, so it also incorporates really to repurpose existing elements as much as possible, but also not to sacrifice any efficiency and performance elements. So I think this is all added basically through the new prefab like construction, and really to achieve a high performing and off-grid solution in the middle of Sydney with a lot of stories around maybe to tell. So that takes us maybe to just 2 more even examples. Paul, you have been building everywhere in Australia, is that correct? And maybe answer also then the second question, is everything manufactured here in Melbourne?
Yeah, that's right. So for the fabrication side of things, that's Melbourne based. And in terms of where it gets transported to and who the local builder network is, that can be anywhere that things can be transported to. So there's no real restrictions. As an architectural service up front, it's a traditional sort of service where client and architects meet and design together, and then there's a follow through of the prefabrication, and then I guess there's the ultimately the interior design and the look and feel. Our contribution can be all or minimal. So the the interiors, we're very focused on sort of the building fabric and making sure that's got high level of efficiency, but bringing in sort of interiors and other consultants, experts, like in Laura's case, we're talking about water experts and solar experts as interiors experts, to and us and the builder, relying on all of these experts to bring this all together. So yeah, that can be done anywhere.
Yeah,
we have a few questions coming through in the chat. I might just ask a couple now, if that's okay. Firstly, a question from Robert. We might get to Robert in a second when we're chatting to Laura, but Nikki's asked, what can be used as the external cladding for Fairweather Homes? Is that up to the client, or is it always the same thing, or how does that work? And then there's another one after that.
Yeah, so it comes a bit down to sort of how efficient we want to make the fabrication process. So sort of highly efficient wall panel system would be one which has got a timber panel product, like with in Laura's case, and the other one was a WeatherTex. So that's a 1.2 meter wide by whichever height you want panel, which works very seamlessly with our fabrication process. But that's not the limit. Any cladding can be applied. It just depends on how efficiently the building wants to be built, and what the process is around applying that cladding. So we can, metal claddings, we can prepare for metal cladding, but we wouldn't put metal cladding on in the factory. That would be done on site. Bespoke sort of board and batten cladding can be done in the factory. Brick veneer, that can't be done in a factory, but it could be applied sort of, on site by the builder. So it just really, it's around sort of what level of efficiency we're looking at trying to achieve with the prefabrication. And that sort of guides the decision on what cladding to go with, and budget, of course, as well. So anything that's more time consuming still has a sort of labor cost component to it, and anything that's materially costs more will cost more.
Yeah, great. And also Terence has just asked if you can do prefab in 2-story houses, just because we've been looking at 1 story so far. So is 2 stories possible as well, or 3 even?
Absolutely, yeah. So 2 or 3. So low rise construction, sort of timber framing code, building. Yes, absolutely. Anything that can be sort of framed. I mean, mid rise and high rise can be done in timber too, and can be panelised. It just becomes around logistics and cost and sort of size of the building. But yes, sort of for residential buildings, 2 stories or 3 is fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Back to you, and Robert, we'll get to your question in a bit. Thank you.
Maybe one more to add, in terms of, like, we were talking about material choices, and I know, for example, in Laura's case, that was a very collaborative process, also in decision making. But I'm assuming also you are putting forward like a best case materials and so on. So what's usually that process like? And where do you see, for example, opportunities even to make more low carbon choices, for example, or circular choices and so on with your clients?
Absolutely. So a lot of that is sort of in that design phase discussion around, what's the scope of the project, what are we trying to achieve from a design point of view, and then the materialities naturally comes into the conversation around that. As I said before, some of it's around sort of efficiencies in production and what would be most efficient, but then there's also everyone's own personal sort of position on carbon footprint and circularity, and what contribution this building makes to sort of that. And so we would expect to work through some of those that sort of decision-making criteria with the client around that, and sort of offer as much advice as we're able to around what is a high carbon footprint material versus what's a lower one, what realistically might be able to be sourced, what works well with sort of the fabrication process or the panelisation process. I mean, there's also, every building has a whole lot of other factors in it too, like bell ratings, or sort of thermal performance requirements, or exposure maybe to a coastal environment, or in Laura's case we had boundary walls, so there's fire ratings required with that, which only certain materials are able to offer that sort of fire rating. So there's a whole lot of other factors that come into sort of each design, but we would expect to have that discussion sort of early on. I mean, anything that's a renewable, sort of low intensity and locally made would be something that we would sort of prioritize. And there's natural, anything that's not sort of highly manufactured would obviously have sort of lesser sort of carbon footprint. The circularity discussion is sort of an ongoing discussion around that. In Laura's case, circularity came into the discussion around using UPVC windows and comparing those with timber. So sort of putting UPVC windows versus timber windows came up with discussions around performance, durability, aesthetics, cost, recyclability. And then with timber windows, we talked about performance, but maintenance, aesthetics, cost, performance. We've got to compare all of those things when we're comparing materials with materials. And with Laura's case, sort of landed on UPVC for the windows for some of the circularity opportunities there around recyclability and diverting plastics to sort of circular futures rather than sort of dead end futures. So it can go quite deep. I've got to say.
Absolutely. But it also, I guess you're guiding the process anyway, and putting also certain considerations to actually get also to an agreed next step and outcome.
Yeah,
but I really appreciate.
Yeah, that said, I think the more informed and educated the client is on how to make those decisions, and this is sort of a bit of a plug for Evitat and sort of the Impossible House, and what we're sort of all kind of on about is that the more information that customers and clients can have about their own position on a lot of these things is really important, because that's what ultimately sort of guides all of those involved in the process from the beginning to the end. Because we'll be there through architecture and fabrication. You've also got builders, and you've got other consultants, and the more knowledge, and this will go to sort of lead into Laura's piece, the more knowledge from the consumer, the better, really. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's great to find a common language in the process, and really to support these decisions and goals, for example, and knowing, for example, that on the architectural side, on the construction side, that is fully supported as well. I think this is a critical part, because if we are looking in the outcomes from across the sector in terms of the homes, often that doesn't actually reflect on our ambitions. And this is a process which needs all stakeholders involved to some degree, but there needs to be an educational piece, because we want to avoid going in circles and having no decisions made down the process. So yes, it's a very critical part. Yeah. All right. So Laura, maybe introduce yourself a little bit. I know you have been on a couple of webinars already. The Impossible House is also well known to some people, but I find it absolutely amazing. And talk a little bit about also how you came to choose actually Fairweather Homes and work with Paul together.
Yeah, sure. I should probably mention that I work in finance, so I don't know anything about buildings and the construction industry. So this has definitely been a learning process for me. But yeah, just some context for everyone, I guess. So I'm trying to build an off-the-grid 3-bedroom house in Newtown in Sydney, and it's on 104 square metres. And I also want as much of the build to recycle the existing materials in the house, and where I can't do that, then I want to source sustainable materials. And because it's on such a small block, and because I'm going off the grid, then I need to be extremely energy efficient with everything. And so that's, one of the reasons that I've chosen prefab and chosen Paul to help me with the construction process, is because when you're choosing a prefab build, everything fits together better and you've got less leaks, which means that I'll be using less energy. The materials are sustainably sourced, so they use plantation timber. So that's all great. But then the other really important thing was, because I'm doing things that are a little bit weird, I needed to have a prefab solution that fit in around all of that weird stuff that I wanted to do on the property. And a few of the other prefab people that I had spoken to, they really couldn't accommodate that. So theirs was more kind of, cookie cutter. This is the building form that you get. Whereas Paul, I think I've changed the designs 49 million times, and he's accommodated that every step of the way. So for more context for people, so I think we've been working together for about 6 years now, and I can't tell you the number of times that we've changed the drawings to fit all the off-grid stuff in. So yeah, Paul's organisation is ticking all of the boxes on the sustainability front for me, but then also the fact that he can make the design bespoke, and also fit other things in that are, also a little bit weird. So I found this old staircase, and they're managing to fit that into the drawing. They somehow fit all of my water recycling, the battery, the solar panels, the incinerating toilet, all into this tiny little space. So I don't think it could have worked out better, really, working with Fairweather.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, actually. And I think it's a big statement also for Paul and the patients to accommodate these needs and aspirations. I find it really absolute amazing, and an absolute great process of collaboration as well. I think, Laura, I know that you are absolutely passionate to create here really a small footprint as much as possible. And even, you have rolled it out across how you want to live in the home, how you are building the home, and even the design of the home. So it's a really incredible journey, but it's also an incredible outcome. So well done to everyone involved. This is quite an example. So Laura, you have also some sources of documentation. You have your website, your Instagram account, and you're posting regularly. I want to maybe quickly also show a video. Give me just a second.
I might just jump in then, Sonia, while you're pulling up the video. Just a couple of questions maybe here for, I guess, for Laura and for Paul's. I'm going back to Robert's question. Robert asked Laura if when you were looking into prefab as an option for your place, did you kind of do a bit of a cost sense check across doing a traditional sense? And if so, how did that stack up, and how come you decided to go with the prefab option?
Yeah, that definitely was part of the decision-making process, because one of the other goals of the project is to keep the costs down, because I want other people to copy this project. And I knew I knew that the build time would be less. I knew that that the build time would be less than, you know, I don't have to spend as much on the builders. And then also the contract is usually fixed price. So you've got a lot more control and ability to budget in that respect as well. So yeah, cost was definitely an aspect in the decision-making process.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then also just quickly, a question from David, and I mean, we can point David towards your website as well, but he's just asked, why did you choose to go off-grid in the middle of the city where one would expect the grid to be readily available and stable?
Yeah, so I wanted to, you know, push the envelope and, you know, I guess inspire other people to think about whether we should be relying on government services to supply all of our energy and water needs. So, you know, if you think about the water supply that we get, you need to build a whole bunch of infrastructure. That's often very impactful on the environment. And it's very costly. And, you know, if we all just harvested the water in the little space that we lived in, we wouldn't have to build all of that infrastructure. And it's the same with, you know, sewage as well. So if you just kind of dealt with your own waste on your own property, then we don't have all of this infrastructure that we need to build. And again, you know, really impactful on the environment. And if you go to my website also, there's a little bit about the fact that, you know, we pump poo out into the ocean, which probably isn't too crash hot when you think about that either. So, you know, there's all these things that all of these big services are doing to the environment. If we just looked after ourselves on our own little plot, I think would, you know, minimise our footprint by quite a lot.
All right. Yeah. Do we have another question, Danielle?
No, that's great for now.
All right.
There's a question about air tightness, but I think Paul will get to it in a second. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we can add that in a second. Laura, I will start this video, and yeah, you might need to take us a little bit through.
Yeah.
Can everybody
see how small the block is? I think is the first thing that you'd know. But Paul shipped this up one day on the back of a pretty small truck. So it was weird to see, you know, my house on the back of a trailer. You'd kind of think of it as being much bigger than that. But anyway, and then they sequentially moved these walls in up the lane on the left-hand side, which you can't see. And then within the day, all the walls were up. So, you know, it went from the floor as it is there that you can see. And then I came back again at the end of the day and everything was up. So, you know, this notion that prefab is quick, I can tell you it definitely is quick.
It is. And we got another one. Just a second.
Yeah, the lane on the left-hand side. So you can see how narrow it is. And Paul was mentioning that we needed to make sure that the panels were small enough for the guys to be able to lift and put into place. That doesn't mean there wasn't some swearing, but they got it all up, and yeah, minimal amount of swearing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And luckily, not the windows were installed already, so it's still manageable. So the window install happened then after the panels were up, and yeah, okay, really interesting. Because otherwise, windows are so heavy, and the panels wouldn't be able to be carried.
Just on the windows, so the window suppliers were happy to send the window frames unglazed. So the issues, well, the positives around highly thermal performing windows is that you've got double or triple glazing, right? And that's 2 or 3 sheets of glass, which is really heavy. So in this situation with the builder and with the window supplier, they're very happy to send the frames only, and these are all these little incremental sort of benefits in terms of how to sort of get the frame up.
Yeah.
Quickly. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going back into the slides. Give me just a second. Hang on.
Maybe we just ask about efficient houses and air tightness then, Paul, on that question.
Yep.
Before about mechanical ventilation and how tight you can get a prefab place.
Yeah, so I mean, the short answer, I suppose, is what we're doing is, I guess, step one in what would be like a passive house type of sort of wall construction, where and I say step one in that we're working focusing on the outside. So air tightness has got, you know, two components to it. There's external fabric and then there's internal, sort of the way the walls are managed. So what we're doing is wrapping, you know, fully wrapping the walls, and taping, sheathing and wrapping and taping sort of all of the external building fabric. So what that is basically equivalent to what a sort of passive house type of wall construction would be, and that's sort of like the first step towards sort of air tightness from the outside. The other element to it is how the internals are managed and how that's wrapped and how the services are then run, and then how penetrations are run. But you know what we're offering with sort of that first example we showed, that would be, you know, that's all of those walls are wrapped fully on the outside, so air tightness is, and then taped to the slab, and you know, taped to each other, and then taped to the roof. That's, yeah, so the answer is this is probably, with careful planning around penetrations through the wall system, this is kind of the first step to the optimal way to achieve sort of a passive house. And if you go to Germany or Sweden, you'll see that this is panelization. Like what we're doing is basically how they achieve their you know, really high performing buildings.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I'm really, really excited having Paul on our platform. Evitat was really built by that idea to bring in an ecosystem of vetted supply, but also experienced professionals in the sector. And this is exactly what we are building up. On Evitat currently, you can already find vetted suppliers. When we are talking about vetted suppliers, that means they need to provide substantial evidence around their sustainability claims. So, for example, that can come in form of testing results. It can come through EPDs and other energy efficiency measures, or anything that's relevant to the material or the product. We want to keep it also not just product material focus, but extending it also across energy efficient renewable products. So we have, for example, also mechanical ventilation, hot water heat pumps, and so on. So we want to grow that. Why this is relevant is under the platform is actually a data layer. And every time you, for example, then interact with some of these stakeholders, you're proceeding and procuring some materials, some decisions around products, or even design decisions, that will go into your client's logbook. So the homeowner can actually create a logbook for free. And all these data points are getting actually attributed to the logbook. And it showcases over time a great way how you're improving your home, and how that actually contributes to better outcomes. And I can show you that in a second live on the website. Just need to just a second, because we did use Laura's case and created the case study. So everyone can sign up for free. And once you add, for example, or start adding certain, it's not showing at the moment. Hang on, is that just a share? It's a typical example. Give me just a second. Other than that, I will share maybe the slide to showcase. Yeah, it's probably my internet. Okay, I'll go back and share the slides. So here you see a snapshot of, for example, a case study I've built for our home here in Melbourne. We are renting this place, but I wanted to also showcase a little bit what it does. So the lookbook takes you through 2 pathways. It taps into goal settings, and that's exactly what Paul and Laura did in the beginning. Laura was putting a lot of effort throughout her journey to get clarity around the goals she wants to achieve with this home. And once this is actually clear, it becomes a driver of decision making, and it makes also the life, for example, for Paul, much easier to engage with this client and to achieve and proceed within these phases. So that's one part of the logbook. You can share these goals as a homeowner with your professional, with the design professional, with the builder, depends who is involved in the project. Or the second part is also it actually creates an assessment of your existing home. It also showcases you where you have improvement opportunities. And the impact meter is a very nice, powerful piece to tell you how your home performs along these improvements. And in Laura's case, it is like full on in terms of efficiency and carbon reduction. And I think also affordability. There's so much going on. And it is a testament, it is a demonstration of these investments. And when I'm talking about investments, it's not just money-wise, it is also the time spent. And it feels good to know that you have contributed to an outstanding piece of work. It's a home which has potential to serve many generations as in the future as well. And it contributes a small footprint and hopefully maybe even no operational carbon in the best case possible. So this is the platform we are building together in that ecosystem, and we are inviting really design professionals and builders to join us and to be part of that, so that clients can be educated, you can collaborate, curate that experience and the journey, and achieve better outcomes for everyone. So on this note, I think we are a little bit over time. I want to thank you, Paul, and Fairweather Homes, and also Laura for your time tonight. It was absolutely amazing to dive through the process and to hear all the details around prefabrication, how it delivers not just environmentally friendly construction solution, but it also delivers, I think, a great opportunity even for the construction sector, particularly the building process, to think around a new way of doing business and to incorporate sustainability from the ground up, and to optimize the processes so that we don't end up in a situation where we are at the moment with a lot of builders even going broke and construction companies going broke. There's a lot of pressure points in the sector anyway. So yeah, thank you all for coming tonight, for sharing, and also thank you for everyone joining this session. If you have any additional questions, feel free to post them also on community under the webinar, or send them through to us. We are more than happy to share them with both participants tonight. And yeah, and if you want to join Evitat, feel free. It's completely free for everyone to explore. And I hope to see you soon in the next webinar. So keep an eye out on your EDMs, and I wish you all a really nice evening. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Laura, Paul.
No
Thanks,
worries.
Daniel.
Laura. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you.